Hello everybody, I'm THP, and welcome to my Game of the Decade Top 10 list. That's right, we are taking the entire, all the way from 2010 to this year, 2019, all of the best games. Something that I was thinking about was taking, all of the number one Game of the Year games for all of the videos that I've done. I think I've done up until, 2014, I think. And so I said, I'll take all of my number ones, from back then all the way until now, and that's the list. But I thought that was a little too lazy, and besides, my thoughts and my opinions change over time, so that list would not be representative of what I actually feel now. And so there's a lot to talk about, honestly, and I could be here talking all day about all of these games, but there is something that I definitely want to say before I actually get to the list. And so I just want everybody to understand, disclaimer time, is that this is a very subjective list. I'm just one guy, with one perspective, one walk of life, with, obviously I have certain desires when I look for a video game, and the stuff that I like in the video game, the stuff that I'm looking for in a video game. I can guarantee you that my list will be in no way similar to your list. But, I'm gonna have my reasons, you have your reasons. It's just my personal opinion, and it's my subjective opinion that always changes over time, as I just said, I was gonna take all of the number ones of all of my other lists, and then have that be the list, but then I saw it, and it's like, I don't really like that list. There's a bunch of other games that I was thinking about, and so, yeah, I'm just gonna say what I feel, and you guys can let me know in the comments whether you agree, disagree, and of course, give me your own personal list of your top 10 games of the decade, or your one game of the decade, whatever. It's been 10 years. A lot of stuff happens in 10 years. So, yeah, you can literally pick so many games, hundreds of games, and so, try to, squeeze it all into, 10 of the best games. That's always going to be impossible, so, just from my own perspective, from my own walk of life, here are my personal top 10 games of the entire decade. The best of the best. And even the best of those best. Those are the games that I have on this list. And especially back in 2010, 2011, 2012, all of those earlier years, obviously, are a lot more hazy in my memory, so you definitely have to go back and do some new research and investigate what games came out whenever you think about a certain game. There's a surprising amount of recent games that are here in this list, which is great. The newer the games are, the better they should be, So let's not waste any more time. We really don't have any honorable mentions on this list. I could totally do that, but there's one, runner-up. One game that I wanted to mention. I didn't want to make this video without talking about this game, but it didn't quite make the list of 10, so I'll just talk about it here. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is a really, really good game. Now, you guys know my opinions on Super Mario Galaxy 2. I personally love the first one, Mario Galaxy 1, the best out of those two. Based on my personal experience playing the second one, to me it feels like an expansion pack of the first one, because with the first one I loved the hub, I loved the story, the cutscenes and all that stuff. I thought that game was perfect as it is. I never thought that game needed a sequel. But it did get a sequel, and all of the levels that are in it are super duper well. That is like Nintendo level design at its finest. And you got the whole Yoshi thing or whatever. Everybody's infatuated with, the one Mario Galaxy game with Yoshi in it. There's a lot of really incredible things to compliment the game for, and I think when we look back and think about the best Wii games or one of the best Mario games, just purely on the level design alone, not talking about the story, not talking about the cutscenes or the music or anything like that, purely as a Mario game, I think Mario Galaxy 2 is going to be one of those games that are going to be super duper up there. And even though I don't like Mario Galaxy 2 as much as I like the first one, I fully acknowledge that Mario Galaxy 2 is one of the best. It didn't quite make my list, but I wanted to mention it because I think it deserves to be mentioned. Super Mario Galaxy 2 from 2010 to 2019, it still holds up very well today, one of the best games of this entire decade. Alright, with that out of the way, now let's move on to the actual list of 10 games. One last thing. The 10 that are here are in no particular order, with the exception of number 1. The number 1 game is a little higher. above all of the others, and I'll have my reasons. But, just because one game is on number 8, that doesn't mean the number 5 is, like, objectively better or anything like that. All of these games are legendarily good, We're just, picking at straws here, I don't want to be super, talking in decimals or anything like that. That doesn't matter to me. All of these games, all of them are absolutely, amazingly, incredibly good, and all of you, before you die and leave this world, you should all play these games no matter what. But I will definitely hold my case for the number 1 on this one. So number 10, let's kick it off with Rez Infinite. Rez Infinite is a game that I knew about for quite a while. It's been out since like back in the Xbox 360 days. It's a very simple game. It's almost like a little shooter sort of game. It's very unique. It's very difficult for me to actually explain what that actually is. So you hold down the button and you aim at a bunch of enemies, release the button, and it shoots. Very music based. It is a wild trip of visuals and whatnot. I love the soundtrack in it. It's one of those very addicting games that you can just play multiple times and just not really get tired of it. And so Rez Infinite came out initially as a PlayStation VR exclusive game back when PlayStation VR was kind of a brand new thing that people weren't really sure about. Everybody was very skeptical about it, but then Rez Infinite came out and oh my god, it blew me away. Especially with all the possibilities of like Area X and all of the levels from the original Rez being fully playable in virtual reality, being able to move around and turn and having the music blaring in your ears and stuff and playing it with the controller. It's incredible. You have to really play it on VR to truly feel the impact of virtual reality. And of course, back then VR was relatively new, and so one of the first impressions that I had was with that game, and there really isn't anything like it, honestly. Rez, just by itself, was already a pretty fantastic game. A game that, is very short. You can beat it in around a couple of hours, but it's very easy to kind of just pick it up and play it again from the very beginning. There's different difficulty levels, different scores, different modifiers. Then, of course, there's Area X, which is a whole brand new thing that takes Rez and kind of, turns it into a different direction that I really enjoyed it quite a lot. It just opens the floodgates for a bunch of more creative things. And then they moved on to other stuff like the Tetris effect, which also, in VR, really incredible experience, very similar to the Rez game. It is because this game is in virtual reality that it is further enhanced from its original, and is very difficult to come up with a game that's better in terms of properly showing off VR or showing how impressive it can be and how like impactful it can be. I don't know, it's strange. It's very difficult for me to really nail down why this game of the decade for me, because it was already fantastic back then and now it was made twice as good, like way better, because of virtual reality. And it's almost like a spiritual experience that you have when you put on VR for the first time and it's this game, and going around through all the bosses and stuff. In Area X, it just is the icing on the cake for that. I just wish there was like a whole game blown out that was like Area X the game. But no, it's just a little teaser for something, and I couldn't be happier. That's very much one of those games where you have to sit down, put the headset, and really feel it to truly believe it. And maybe you might not feel it because I'm hyping it up right here, but one of the most memorable experiences that I've had in video games in general is playing Rez Infinite in virtual reality. It's perfect. That game was made to be in VR, and I'm glad that we can play it that way now. I can play that game a million times, and I've yet to be bored. Alright, now moving on to my number 9 game of the decade, and that is The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Yes, this one's a classic. Skyrim came out within the last 10 years, believe it or not. It's a game that a lot of people are still playing today, and it's mostly thanks to the modding community, right? I remember when the developers and the marketing and stuff were saying that, it just generates quests, infinite. You can technically play this game forever, for the rest of your life. And, so far, they're pretty much being true when they say that, because there's still a lot of people that are still playing it. Not the normal vanilla game, obviously. I feel like a lot of people criticize the regular game. It's not until the modding where, you have better menus and better visuals and better mechanics, and some of people even have like full-on like expanded stories before, you know, the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, with a whole different areas. People have had, like, Morrowind on there. People, have recreated, you know, Cyrodiil from Oblivion on Skyrim, plus a whole bunch of different things. Thomas the Tank Engine showing up on Skyrim, the most important mod of them all. The community has constantly and consistently kept this game alive. And, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I've been playing that game in virtual reality on PlayStation VR, just like vanilla as is, and I love it, you know? There's a billion things that you can do in it, and of course, being in VR, you can really feel like you're in it, so you're more invested. I love leveling up my character based on the stuff that you actually use, because there are many moments in other RPGs where you have to, like, allocate all of your points, and so you choose what you want, and sometimes even we think, oh yeah, I'm totally gonna use explosives, but you never use them. You're actually using your bow and arrow, or you're sneaking around. So the game gives you upgrades based on what you're actually using and not what you think you want to use, you know? The story, obviously, is as Elder Scrolls-y as ever. I've always been an absolute slave to, like, medieval, high fantasy kind of stuff, so, it doesn't matter if the story is bad. You're seeing dragons fly around, and so that in itself is really fun. The magic here is a little cooler than, from Oblivion. You can actually, you know, shoot fire streams and arc lightning and whatnot. Pick flowers, you can, you know, do alchemy, you can have, obviously, all of your different classes. That gives you, a pretty big, high reason, some big encouragement for why you should play the game multiple times, you know, because you have different characters that look different, you can customize them differently, they all have different benefits and stats, and the dialogue's a little different depending on what you do, and of course, your character build based on, you know, whether you're a stealthy character, or you're a super aggressive character, or like a magical guy. I've still yet to, you know, try out a whole bunch of different things, you know, mostly the magic kind of things. I've always been the rogue, thief kind of character that's always really stealthy, always uses the bow and arrow, always sneaks around. That has always been my way to play, just naturally. But there are other days where I'm like, dude, I just want to throw magic spells everywhere, or like summon a bunch of skeletons out of the ground. And that's an entirely different way to play the game, right? And that's not even including, you know, the PC version where you can mod the hell out of the game that adds like a billion more things on top of that. So, you know, Skyrim really is a gem, you know? Even though people criticize it a hell of a lot, I think those exact same people play it for like a million hours, you know? You gotta really love a game that much for it to come out. Since like 2011 all the way to now, there's still a ton of mods. There's a whole community still keeping that game alive, and yeah, there are no signs of stopping for Skyrim, and that gets me very, very excited. One of the best games of the decade, because, geez, you know, it is essentially defined the decade. It has been ever present throughout the entire history of video games, ever since it came out all the way to now. Skyrim has always been there, and I think it'll continue to be there for a very, very long time. And now let's move on to my number 8 game of the decade. I really wanted to have this game a little higher from where I left it, but again, it's in no particular order. The problem was that all of the other games that are higher are just so... I just love them so much. I just had no choice but to bring, you know, this game down a little lower, but it's one of the best games I've ever played. It's incredible. It's a Japanese RPG on the 3DS. It's actually 2 games that I want to splice into one. I know I might sound a little weird or even a little bit unfair to have 2 games in one spot, but it'll make sense to you as soon as I say it. I'm talking about Shin Megami Tensei 4 and Shin Megami Tensei 4 Final, or as you know it in America as Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. So those 2 games are essentially 2 parts of the same story. They're just 2 separate games with 2 different protagonist characters. It's literally part 1 and part 2. You know, if there's ever like an official Shin Megami Tensei 4 like Ultimate Collection that just has both campaigns in just one game, you would not be able to tell the difference because the graphics are the same, the gameplay is the same. It's essentially just a continuation of the story. So I'm gonna count both of these games as just Shin Megami Tensei 4, just the whole thing, part 1 and part 2. My god, that game is incredible. I'm not super duper well versed in Shin Megami Tensei. I got introduced to the series because of Persona. Obviously, I played Persona 4 and Persona 3, and so I figured out that they were spin-offs of Shin Megami Tensei. And I had heard about them, but I never really played any of the games, and there's like a billion different spin-offs and whatever, and so I ended up searching for, like what's the regular Shin Megami Tensei, right? And so there's 1 and 2 and 3 Nocturne. I have Nocturne actually on PS3. And then there was 4. I think at the time when I was searching for stuff, 4 was the newest, latest and greatest one that was coming out. And so I tried out actually 4 Apocalypse first, because I saw 4 Final and I saw the trailers and I thought it was really interesting. And it was on 3DS. I was looking for a good JRPG to play on 3DS. And I was completely blown away by Shin Megami Tensei 4 Final and how it's a continuation of the first story. It doesn't really feel like it. It feels like it could be its own thing. And so when I played the original 4, it almost felt like, like a prequel or like a flashback or something, right? Like when you're watching episode 1 of Star Wars or whatever. And both games tied together beautifully. I am absolutely in love with seeing that story and how, kind of dark and depressing it is, but there's also a lot of hope in it, All of that story of, like, Mikado and the samurai and having to go underground into Naraku, and then you go underground and you find the entire city of Tokyo. It's so crazy. And then time flows differently within Tokyo as opposed to outside of Mikado. And so that's like Flynn, right? The regular protagonist from SMT4, but then you have the protagonist from SMT4 Final or Apocalypse with Nanashi, this other dude that lives in Tokyo, and he goes up over to the other world, and, it's like these 2 different worlds and 2 different perspectives clashing and having this post-apocalyptic kind of scenario with demons and demon catching and the music. Oh, the soundtrack is it's beyond God tier. Shin Megami Tensei, like, the soundtracks that I've been hearing, particularly the one from 4, is top-notch. There's no comparison. The music is like no other, and of course, on 3DS, when you have the 3D turned on and having all those pixel art demons move around, it's amazing. It's a very difficult game, obviously. There's a lot of boss battles and stuff that are just impossible, especially in the original Shin Megami Tensei 4, fighting that giant fly and certain bosses. The original one is absolutely way more difficult than Apocalypse. Apocalypse kind of is more forgiving with the difficulty levels, and so I went a little easier on that one. But the characters are amazing, the twists and turns, all of the entities and gods that, you're fighting against. There's almost even like a political perspective that you can take on it, with like, the god Merkaba, with this perspective, and then you have Lucifer with this perspective, and then you have the humans that are kind of in the middle, and all of the other demons that are kind of stuck within the whole mix. Yeah, every single time I think about that game, I want to play it again. I remember getting super stuck on the original Shin Megami Tensei 4, but still powering through and feeling so satisfied when you actually win one of these battles. And then with Apocalypse, just seeing the story and seeing the 2 campaigns kind of, flow together, seeing how hopeless everything is, the story developing, all the characters that join your party. It's so good, so good. It's an iconic game with awesome visuals, awesome story, awesome music. It really marks you. Shin Megami Tensei 4 specifically is one of those games that just leaves a scar in your body that will never go away, and is a positive one. It's a really positive one. It's one of the most epic, most exciting, most emotional stories out there, because it's like complete post-apocalyptic hopelessness, but then you have this world outside where all of society kind of resets itself, and so they all have their own customs and their own religion and their own thing, and you have all of these demons. You have like the Pokemon aspect where you catch all the demons. Yeah, there's nothing better. And it's for 3DS as well. It's a freaking 3DS game that you can take with you everywhere. Those games take a long time to beat, but my god, man, I kind of want to play them again. Okay, again, I could be here talking about every single individual game all day, so I just have to stop myself and just move forward. The next game, which I think is my 10, 9, 8, 7, my number 7 game of the entire decade is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for the Nintendo Switch. I say Ultimate specifically and not, other games like, say, Brawl or Smash 4 or whatever, because Smash Ultimate really is the ultimate Super Smash Bros. Game. The name fits it perfectly because, It is very much the culmination of Masahiro Sakurai's work. It is the ultimate crossover game, the ultimate, party, family game that you can play with everyone because there's a character that fits everyone, there's a ton of content, there's a ton of characters, and we still have more characters coming out with DLC that are even crazier. We have Joker from Persona 5, Banjo-Kazooie, Terry from Final Fight, and all these SNK games, King of Fighters. There's an enormous amount of content in here, and it keeps providing more and more and more. The game has continued to be relevant because they keep coming out with all these crazy reveals, and I love that whenever there's anything Smash related, the world just stops, Everybody in the internet makes their reaction videos, including myself, and they all just want to know what gets announced next because it's so hype. And thanks, to other people that kind of, have made the reaction thing more popular, like Etika, God Rest His Soul. People kind of get in on this party that is essentially a celebration of video game history, a celebration of not only Nintendo, but all video games, thanks to now the DLC including other non-Nintendo properties. And I think Sakurai has really done a lot to, really give all of the love and attention that every single game deserves. Every single DLC character is not just, here's the character and that's it. No, you have a stage, you have as much music as you possibly can, and every single little move, twitch, grimace move that happens related to the character is a reference to something within their history, which is something that I can very much respect. You can tell that Sakurai loves video games, just in general, and so he never disrespects any game. He always gives it, I just moved my microphone. He always gives it the amount of respect that all of these games deserve, even if they are from rival companies, like PlayStation or Microsoft. All of the stuff with World of Light is obviously really fun. The graphics, the enormous, encyclopedic amounts of music that are in this game is absolutely insane. All of those features that you can do, listen to the music while the Switch is turned off and stuff, it's amazing. None of these things Sakurai had to do, but he did, and I appreciate him a lot for it. And of course, Ultimate is obviously, the one that I'm gonna put here as Game of the Decade, because it just represents everybody, man. It's the culmination of all of the Smash games. Everyone is here, literally, like in the tagline, and the game has never stopped being fun. It's another one of those games where, even way after it comes out, it's still winning awards, it's still, being praised by fans, still being played at tournaments, competitive. The competitive scene is very much keeping that game alive as well, on top of the casual people just playing it because they want to play the DLC, the fact that there's going to be more fighters coming up in the future. Yeah, man, this is really the ultimate video game crossover game, which has inspired other fighting games to also have crossovers, like Mortal Kombat with its crossovers, and BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle with all of its crossovers. There's just a lot, It has very much inspired many other games to kind of get in on this whole crossover thing, and I couldn't be happier. Okay, moving on to number 6 for Game of the Decade. We have Yz8 Lacrimosa of Donna. So to give you guys some backstory, I did not know anything about the Ys series. I know that it existed, but I never really bothered to actually check it out. It just seemed like, fantasy game, whatever. And so I never really gave it a chance until I got a review code from NIS America to review Yz8 Lacrimosa of Donna. The game looked fun, I saw a trailer or two, and I'm like, okay, sure, fine. I wasn't really expecting much, but I completely fell in love with the Ys games, and it started with that one game. That game, again, it's a relatively recent game, but it's almost like a classic for me, in my perspective, because it's a totally separate game. I know it has a big number 8 on it, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to follow any of the other games to be able to understand this one. And it's a very simple story when you really stop and think about it. You're in a boat with a bunch of different people, and then the boat sinks and breaks down. You get shipwrecked onto this island, and typical, right? Big, scary island where if you go, nobody returns, right? It's this cursed island where you can't get out. And so the entire point of the game is for you to find all of the people that you met on the boat, all of your friends, and just, recruit them into your team or make a little village. And so that's what ends up happening. You start the game off with essentially nothing. You're just stranded there with nothing and no one, and you slowly start meeting new people, and then this person is in charge of doing this person is in charge of doing that, and you start off with just a little fireplace. And from that fireplace, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and nicer. And before you know it, you're like 40 hours into the game, and you have like a big happy family, you know, of just abandoned people on this island. Everybody has a role, everybody has their routine, and as you keep exploring this island, you keep uncovering more very interesting secrets about, you know, what happened here. There's like an ancient civilization. There's time travel in this game, technically. And the way that they do time travel is very, very interesting, you know? There's like this one particular character, the Donna, the titular Donna, who is technically like two characters in one, you know? It's like a girl that lives in the present, but you can also do like weird magic stuff so that she can go back into the past and be like, oh yeah, the me from the future said this, so I'm gonna go do this in the past to help myself in the future. It's crazy. It's like mind-blowing stuff. But it kind of works. But yeah, obviously the story gets really deep, and there's like a ton of bosses and stuff. It's like an action RPG. You run around in the island, and you're there slashing away at stuff, leveling up, getting upgrades in very Metroidvania style, where, you know, you can't access one place. You just explore somewhere else, get the item, come back, and then, you know, keep exploring more areas. And the game is beautiful on PC and Nintendo Switch, where it's, you know, very anime art style. Everybody looks really nice. The music, super, like, you know, heavy rock. It's super hype every time you're exploring places. The designs for the monsters are really original. There's a lot of side quests. All of the characters that are like abandoned on the island, you get to know them, and they're all really awesome. There's like a true ending that you can get that made me very emotional. I was like here, like the tears were right here during the ending. And so it was such an impactful game to me that from that point on, I just became a fan of the Ys games in general, and I said, okay, I'm gonna start from 1, and then 2, and 3, you know, kind of like with Kingdom Hearts. You know, right now I'm playing through all the Kingdom Hearts games, and so I'm kind of doing the same thing for Ys right now, because Yz8, the latest one, I just completely fell in love with it. It is such a fantastic, like, isolated, well-contained story that anybody can get into it, you know? Even if you don't like Japanese RPGs, I highly, 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 highly recommend that you get Yz8 Lacrimosa Donna. It's an amazing, awesome game, super duper fun, and yeah, whenever I look back at, like, my fondest video game memories, there are many moments that come from Yz8. And very similar to Shin Megami Tensei, the more I think about this game, the more I just want to go back and play it, even though it takes a lot of time. But yeah, that's a really precious game to me. That game means a lot. Oh, and of course, listening to that opening theme, it just gets me emotional. You know, after finishing the game, it just means so much more. Dun 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 dun. Beautiful, beautiful. Don't even get me started. So that's a really fantastic game for people that are not fans of the typical JRPG. But the next game that I have on here, my number 5 game of the decade, is one that definitely is for more hardcore JRPG players, people that like a ton of dialogue, people that like to just do turn-based stuff and explore and do quests and whatnot. This game, in my opinion, is the prime definition of just pure, unadulterated adventure. And this is technically an older game, but here in the West, we experienced this game for the first time, you know, during the past 10 years. This game came out, actually, let me see. It came out on the PSP in 2011 in North America. So as far as I'm concerned, it counts. Of course, the PSP game that I'm talking about is The Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky. This is the one game that completely, like, started this whole mess of me, you know, playing through all of the Legend of Heroes games and Cold Steel 1, 2, and 3 and all of that. Yeah, I absolutely adore that game in every single sense of the word. I would take a bullet for this game. And I do want to be very specific that I am talking about the PSP version of The Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky 1. I'm not talking Sky 2 or Sky 3, you know, Sky like second chapter or Sky the third. No, those are really good as well, but I want to focus on just the first one. And you see, this is a game that had come out back in like 2004 or whatever, back in Japan, and it was never translated into English officially until recently in 2011. And so when that game came out, a lot of people got very excited for some reason. I didn't really know anything about it at all. I didn't know anything about the Legendary Heroes. But then like the articles announcing that the game was coming out, there were comments of people saying, you gotta play it. You have to play it. It's one of the best games ever. There was this one particular like very long comment talking about like, I swear to God, you have to try these games out. You will not regret it. They're amazing. And so it caught my interest. I was like, okay, well, if they're really that good, let's check it out, right? It was like $25 or whatever on PSP of all things. Even at the time, you know, the PSP wasn't relevant anymore. It was all about the Vita or whatever. And so I ended up buying the first game, and I started playing it, and you know, this is exactly why I love playing games completely blind, right? Because whenever there's a new game, there's like a billion trailers, and everybody wants to get all the coverage, so you end up kind of spoiling yourself on most of the game, honestly, and you don't enjoy it as much, right? As opposed to just getting the full experience without really expecting anything. And so that's how I went into it, not knowing anything, not expecting anything. And so the game started, and it really feels like a generic sort of RPG, right? Okay, has like magic and anime teenagers saving the world or whatever. And it is kind of that until the characters start talking. It all looks really generic and whatever on the surface, but the writing for the characters, the banter, the pacing, the sense of humor, all of it is perfect. I love the localization from Japanese to English. I love seeing all of the characters talk to each other. The whole routine that you have in this game of essentially being a bracer. And a bracer in this world is essentially like a cop. You know, you go out there and you help people, you stop bad guys, and that's kind of your career, right? You do that for money. And so you have these two siblings that essentially travel through the entire country of where they are in order to find their dad, because their dad goes missing. That's essentially the big overarching goal of the whole game, while uncovering other bigger mysteries, right? And so that's why I kind of equate this game to like One Piece, if you guys know One Piece. One Piece, the series, is actually very similar in that there's this one big overarching goal that's very simple, you know, King of the Pirates or whatever. And so you end up going to all of these different islands and helping people and meeting new people along the way. And so that's like a small little story arc on its own, but that also builds up to something bigger. And so Trials in the Sky is very much that. If One Piece was a Japanese RPG, it'd probably be like Trials in the Sky, honestly. You know, a very simple collection of people with a very simple goal. They travel to all of these different cities, and in every city, they meet brand new people, and there's always like the one bad guy, and there's like a little story arc, and you beat it, you leave, you move on to other things to, you know, pursue this one goal, but then along the way, you're revealing a bunch of bigger things. And so it's absolutely wonderful. It is a delight. Even though it is like the isometric, you know, sprite art, little pixelated characters, it's still really awesome. It has almost that like Wild Arms 1 kind of look. But I like it. It's a good look. I like the battle system, you know, kind of almost like grid-based, you know, based on distance and movement and stuff. It's turn-based, and it's really, really fun. There's a bunch of characters that go in and out of the story. Some of them you like, some of them you won't. You know, villains, people that have, you know, plot twists behind them. And of course, the relationship between the two siblings kind of start to develop over time, and they bond. And you have tournaments. Like, there's so much. I mean, it really does feel like you're exploring an entire country. You know, you're walking around and having a lot of fun. It really does feel like you're just going on this really big and exciting adventure with these two people, which gives me a lot of One Piece vibes, and I love One Piece, so anything that reminds me of that is really good on my book. And the game itself doesn't really break any ground in terms of like design or gameplay or anything. This is a turn-based RPG like any other. It's just a very, 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 very well-made turn-based Japanese RPG. And of course, there's other stuff that happens in the story where you get, you know, the second game, the third game, and then Cold Steel and all of these other games that kind of factor into the main story. Yeah, that's the point where everything started. And it's incredible seeing how the series has kind of progressed and advanced, all because of this one game. And this is the one that I'm truly in love with, especially when it's on PSP, where you can kind of just take it wherever you want or play it on TV with you know, your PlayStation TV. I know there's like remakes that never came out over here, and I know that they're planning like re-releases. Trials in the Sky is on PC right now, and that's probably the best way to play it on Steam, where you have 1080p, 60 FPS, and a bunch of little upgrades. So yeah, if you guys want to get into this, I recommend playing it on PC. I like it on PSP just because it's portable, and that's where all of my memories lie. It's an incredible game. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. There is literally no other game that has made me care so much for the characters in an RPG than this one. Okay, we have 4 games left. My number 4 game of the decade is, funnily enough, I think my number 4 game of the 2015 list, I think. It's funny how they ended up in kind of the same spot back then and here as well. It's Undertale. Now, upon further reflection, I think I made a mistake putting Undertale on number 4 back then and having Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain on number 1. I still like The Phantom Pain a lot, you know, I don't necessarily regret that decision, but I think Undertale has definitely withstood the test of time and the test of relevance so much more than Metal Gear Solid has. People still talk about Undertale, people still play through Undertale, people still love Undertale, you know, so much so, you know, whenever there's like a group of people that hate a game because of how popular it is, you know you made it. You know you made an impact. And so, I knew from the very get-go, I was like, hey, game of the decade, what should we go for? I immediately thought about Undertale, because there's memes about Undertale in a group of people that are super diehard about it, and people that are equally as diehard about hating it. And that's exactly how you know that this is a very important game that has to be remembered and preserved and loved and appreciated. I mean, if you don't know about Undertale at this point, then you're probably living under a rock, or you just don't play video games at all, because it's on PC, it's on PS4, it's on Switch, it's on PlayStation Vita, you know, it's on a bunch of different consoles now. But at the beginning, it was just a small little PC game that one guy, Toby Fox, made in like 2.5 years, and it ended up being one of the greatest games ever made. For a time, it was one of the highest rated games on Metacritic of all time. And yeah, its popularity and its love, all of the reception, absolutely exploded in the way that no other game has. And it was a very simple game, you know, it's an RPG, with the battles being almost like bullet hell shooter kind of stuff, where you're just dodging bullets everywhere, and you can attack if you want to, because the big, like, grip, the big selling point of the game is essentially the moral choices that you have in the game, you know? When you go into battles with different creatures, you can either fight them like any normal game, or you can spare them, and so when you're sparing them, you can kind of get to know the monster, you can see what fears it has, what it likes, what it doesn't like, and so you can kind of sweet talk them to, like, not fight anymore, and then you escape out of there. And so depending, if you don't kill anyone, if you just spare every single enemy, even the bosses, then obviously there's a reward that comes with that. But if you just don't care, and you're killing off everybody, that is essentially like the evil route. And so that has its own set of consequences. And on top of that, the game remembers everything that you do. Even when you reset, or you wipe away your save file or something, there's still remnants of what you did before, where characters directly tell you, hey, you did this, I remember, you know? And so it almost feels like the game is like its own living entity, which is not really something you can say about most games in general, to say that the game is alive or something, because the game really does react to a lot of the stuff that you would never expect, you know? A lot of small little details that you wouldn't think about, or that other games would never think about, you know? It has really impacted the industry in a really large way, right? Where like one-man teams are capable of making massive change that inspires other developers to do their own games, you know? Especially recently, there's so many games that are just like one-man teams, like Stardew Valley or whatever, where like this one dude just completely annihilates all of the other AAA games that exist out there, right? You have these corporations of like 400 people making like the most hyper-realistic first-person shooter game ever out there, and then you have this one guy that just whips out a game in like 2.5 years and just kicks the ass of everybody else out there, right? Because there's a lot of love and attention and dedication put into it. Not only that, but there's a lot of original ideas where, you know, this one independent guy has nothing to lose, right? As opposed to a giant corporation that has everything to lose because they have all the money, and they're, you know, they have investors and shareholders, and they gotta make those people happy, and the mainstream audience has to be happy. With Undertale, Toby Fox did exactly what he wanted, and it was rewarded with millions of dollars. Not only that, but we have Deltarune now, which seems like a different version of Undertale that is equally as amazing. You know, this was not like a fluke, you know? You can tell that Toby Fox still has that touch with Deltarune, and Undertale was just the beginning. You know, you have the evil route, the good route, the neutral route. All of the characters that you talk to, they're all really funny, and of course they say different things every single time. Sans is like the ultimate meme. If you want to talk about meme of the decade, I would say Sans is definitely one. The music, also made by Toby Fox, is god tier. Super duper good, very catchy. You can hum the melody to all of these songs and people will know, oh yeah, that's Undertale. An incredible soundtrack. It really gave rise to a lot of like remixes and covers and whatnot. A lot of fan art. Tumblr just went absolutely crazy with Undertale, obviously. And the emotions, my god, the emotions of, you know, every single route, you know, the neutral one, the ending, the true ending, the good guy ending, the evil ending, especially the evil ending. This game really tugs at your heartstrings, you know? This game is as funny as it is happiness-inducing, as it is thought-provoking, as it is absolutely fucking horrifying. I tell a lot of people, Undertale is not a horror game, but it's my favorite horror game if you play it in a certain way, you know? Undertale has just impacted the industry in such an incredible way, especially when it comes to indies and inspiring other indies to kind of do similar things with their own ideas and their own Kickstarters and their own stuff. It just stimulates the industry in a way that is unlike any other. Toby Fox is a genius, and you know, that guy has, you know, spun out to like do music for like Pokemon and other stuff, and of course he's got Deltarune going on, and that's looking really good. So yeah, things can only go up from here. Toby Fox has a really, really bright future, and Undertale is definitely going to be, you know, the thing that he'll be remembered the most by, and whew, I can't wait to see what he's got going on next. Because maybe for the next decade, for 2020 and on, Deltarune, the completed version of it, might be the game of the decade for that one. Also, I don't know what it is about legendarily good and awesome games where, like, they all have bullet dodging aspects about it. Have you guys ever, like, actually noticed that? There's so many games that are, like, 10 out of 10 amazing game of the decade games that, you know, pretty much all of them have, like, you know, a bunch of bullets and you dodging them. There's, like, one mechanic that is, like, you know, consistent with a lot of these. It's weird. Maybe I'll make a different video about that. Alright, I've been talking for a long time, but don't worry, we're almost done. My number 3 game of the decade, I am very, very conflicted on this one. I have a toss-up between Persona 4 Golden on the PlayStation Vita or Persona 5 on PS4. I'm particularly conflicted about Persona 5 because Persona 5 Royal is coming out pretty soon, but that's in 2020. But it already came out in Japan, so I don't know. I do like Persona 4 Golden a lot, though. Would you guys forgive me if I, like, put both together? No. Those two games are too different. I'm just gonna have to make a choice right here, right now. I'm just gonna have to think on it. Alright, I made my decision. I love Persona 4 Golden to death. It is the best PlayStation Vita game out there, but I'm gonna have to give the game of the decade to Persona 5. My reasoning for that is because it is such a wild change from, you know, the previous games. Say what you want about Persona 4 and how great it is. I mean, when you really stop and think about it, it's Persona 3, but, like, just better, you know? It's like Persona 3 with all of the fixes, with all of the patches installed and, like, a different color. It is essentially the same thing mechanically and structurally. With Persona 5, it is an entirely different beast. They could have just had it in the same format as Persona 3 and Persona 4 with the same menus and all that kind of stuff. Nuh-uh. They went completely the extra mile to make possibly one of the greatest menu designs of all time. Fantastic art direction, great use of color, you know, with the red and the white and the black. It oozes style. It doesn't just ooze, it bleeds, vomits, pisses, orgasm style out of everywhere. And of course, we have a fantastic soundtrack to come with it. Super smooth, super nice, very inspirational. If I could define Persona 5 in one word, is inspiring. Because the entire story of Persona 5 is about this world that is incredibly unfair. Everything is stacked against you, the youth, the future of this world. But, like, you have all of these adults that are just consumed by their greed or their own vanity, their own desires, all of their twisted, you know, mentality or whatever that creates the palaces and all these other worlds and mementos and whatever. And so it is up to the youth, you know, it is up to these guys to kind of steal back their lives, to take their lives back, to not let other people push them around. Now, obviously, this is a video game and it is fantasy, so you have like personas and fighting demons and catching demons and stuff like that. Obviously, we shouldn't take it that literally, right? But the symbolism is there, right? Even within the game, there are people that don't have superpowers that are inspired to stand up for themselves in real life situations when they're getting abused, or there's somebody that keeps pushing them around or telling them what to do or how to live their life, making their lives miserable. Well, the Phantom Thieves actually inspires and motivates others to stick up for themselves, to fight back, to not let other people misinform them or bully them or abuse them or tell them what to do. And so that's something that people can really take away and actually apply that in real life. People always talk about violence, so, oh, if you see something violent in the video game, you'll do it in real life, which is never true. But something that I really do believe in is that we can take lessons and learn things from video games and be inspired by them and motivated by them to actually go out and do whatever you want to do with your life, which is exactly what one of the politician dudes, ironically, one of the politician dudes in the game says, is like, do whatever you want to do, you know? Don't let other people control your life. Don't be chained by like society or something like that, you know, by other people that think that they know what's best for you. Steal your life back. Life will change, you know? And so obviously, you know, all of the songs in the soundtrack are very indicative of that, of like, you know, rebellion, you know, fight back against this power that does not have your interest in mind. They have their interests, and like we the people have the power to stop them. If we just need all of us to kind of come together and just take it all on ourselves without that fear, which I think is an incredibly beautiful message to convey in a video game, particularly, you know, a Japanese RPG that, you know, focuses more on the Japanese society, but it could be applied to many other societies as well. You know, a lot of it is very basic, you know, and not super hyper-specific to Japan. And even if you keep, like, the symbolism and the meaningfulness out of it, the game is just badass, you know? Like, they completely overhauled the combat, and it's still really fun. The graphics are incredible, the cutscenes are awesome, the characters are really lovable. Obviously, when you're so attached to, like, Persona 3 and Persona 4, having this new cast takes a bit of getting used to, but I love these guys just as much as I love the investigation team and Cease and all of those guys. These guys are great, especially now that I'm playing Persona Q2 on 3DS. Yeah, well, you're seeing those guys shine on there as well, and it's awesome. Morgana is by far one of my favorite mascot characters. Better than Koromaru, better than Insufferable Teddy. I like it, you know? The only bad thing I would say is probably the localization. The translation, the English and stuff is kind of crappy, but it honestly could be worse, and that doesn't necessarily deter my personal enjoyment of the game. There are some frustrating things in the story, some really stupid things that they do in the story, but overall, you know, what they're trying to say in the game, the message that they convey, and the way that everything kind of turns out is awesome. I absolutely adore it. As a video game, just isolated by itself, is super duper high quality, but as a piece of media, as a piece of messaging, as a text, you know, Persona 5 as a text is incredible, you know? In a time where everybody is super divided, in a time where everybody's fighting about everything, where we're living in a time where there's fighting and abuse and division and politics everywhere, and it's all so noisy and bothersome, Persona 5 is here to really inspire you to get up. You know, like, you can be the Phantom Thieves. You know, you can steal back your life. You know, I'd wish that there were people like the Phantom Thieves in this world to just, like, magically change the heart of people that are evil, right? But, the entire lesson of the game is that you can do that with your own power. We just have to get together and do it all together. Because if we really put our minds to it, life can change and life will change. Alright, I went off for way too long about Persona 5. We have 2 games left. Alright, so number 2 game of the decade goes to Nier Automata. So I already knew that this game was going to be good when I purchased it, when I got it. So I got the box for it right here. I got it physical to like really preserve it. That's how much I love this game. There's a lot to talk about this game. Like, there's like hour-long video essays just talking about Nier Automata and how meaningful it is and the symbolism and all that stuff. When I first played it, I didn't really catch a lot of that, but like upon playing it a second time and looking at all those videos, like, this game is something else, honestly. You don't even have to play any of the previous games to be able to get this one. This one is very, you know, self-contained, and it's awesome. And so, with so many things that you can say, I find it really funny that in the box, there's a little blurb here by GameSpot that just says, riveting, 9 out of 10. Great. But yeah, man, the story of 2B and 9S. Oh yeah, here we go. Masterpiece, exceptional, superb, dazzling, highly entertaining from all of these other outlets. I mean, I would say this is, game of the decade, number 2 game of the decade, at least for me, in my personal opinion, because is one of those games that really makes you think, makes you cry, makes you laugh, makes you happy, very similar to Undertale. I know it's really strange for me to compare it to Undertale, but there really is a lot of similarities, where like you get deeper and deeper into the story with multiple different playthroughs, because for Nier, there's playthrough A, playthrough B, C, D, E, F, all the way to Y and Z. And so, it's a pretty big objective, to unlock all of these endings. Most of them are joke endings. There's like 4 or 5 that are like actually like super big deal story endings. And, some of them take a long time. Some of them, are really short, a lot of these are like secrets of like, blow up your base and blah, and oh, you died, ha ha ha, and that's one ending, right? But then there's A, B, and C, and so those 3 are like the main ones that show you the full breadth of the story, and I think there's like one more that's like a secret for like a story-based thing, and then there is some DLC afterwards that isn't super story-heavy, just some small little things, but they are really fun. And of course, at the end of the day, this is a video game, so, how does it play? It's an action game, almost action RPG-ish. You level up, you can upgrade your android, essentially, to be an NS, or like androids with, like, robot parts and stuff. And so, you can upgrade all of your different stats, your health, your strength, your speed. You can even, take away stuff if you want, You can have different setups of, like, oh, you can be defensive, you want to be offensive, I want to be balanced. There are things like the HUD, like, okay, the thing that shows your experience, you can just uninstall that and have space for something else that you want, right? Or your health, you can't see your health, Or, there's, one of the endings is like, okay, take away, like, your core, or, like, whatever, the thing that actually gives you life. Okay, uninstall it, you're dead. The end. And of course, playing this on PlayStation 4, the graphics look incredible. There's a lot of, waifu fan art for 2B and her butt, which I enjoy as well, don't get me wrong. The game runs at 60 FPS. The fighting is obviously really, really nice. You get to play as 2B, as 9S, as A2, which is a different robot from later on in the story. Yeah, the story, what a story it tells. Jesus Christ. Toyotaro is a madman. It gives you a lot of emotions, obviously. At the beginning, it just feels like an action movie, but then it goes on to be increasingly more tragic and thought-provoking and sad, but kind of hopeful by the end of it. Is weird. It really gives you time to reflect on, like, humanity and existence as a whole, because there's a lot of really crazy twists about, like, the end of the world and where all the humans go, and why is it only, like, robots fighting the war and whatnot, and, what's the point of this? What are we fighting for? What's the reason for us existing? We're robots, but we essentially behave and talk and feel things like humans, so what's the difference? And then you have these other more robot-looking robots that also talk and have, very human-like attributes to them, right? So it's like, well, what's the difference? Is it because they look different, or they behave different? Or, oh, they're just, taking old archives and files from, humans from a long time ago. But isn't that what we do as well? Like, just reading stuff from the past and then kind of like emulating that. So, yeah, it really gets you into like this rabbit hole, almost like an out-of-body experience of like, oh my god, whatever. If you want to get very philosophical, if you want to, sit next to a fireplace and smoke a pipe and really have a deep conversation about philosophy and, the truth of all existence and humanity and how futile it all is, you can definitely play Nier Automata. And on top of that, you can have a really fun video game that comes with it too. You can fight big giant robots and shoot a bunch of dudes and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Ooh, and the soundtrack. Soundtrack, just like all of these other games, absolutely amazing. You'll find that my favorite games gotta have a really good soundtrack. And with Nier Automata specifically, yeah, there's like some tear-jerking songs. And you'll know when you hear them. Jeez, they just appear in the game, and it really gives you the desire to kind of just want to sit down and take it all in. All right, here we go. The big kahuna. We have the final #1 game of the entire decade, from 2010 all the way to 2019 in terms of like officially released games. I know that some of these games are like Japanese games that never came out until like, within the time frame here in America. Some of these games never had like an official release until way later, or some of these just came out at the same time everywhere. We've had a bunch of different conditions, but all of these technically came out within the last 10 years. And so I say that because the #1 game of the decade, to me, in my opinion, is Minecraft. Now, why do I say Minecraft? Didn't that game, come out in like alpha and beta in like 2009 or whatever? Well, yeah, but the 1.0, the official finished game for Minecraft, came out in 2011 during the very first Minecon, which I think was at the height, like the absolute peak of Minecraft's popularity. Now, granted, it has gone like up and down and up and down over the last 10 years, and that's exactly the point that I'm getting at. Minecraft is easily, bar none, for free, I'll give it to you for free, the game of the decade, because it single-handedly, Notch, this madman Notch, single-handedly changed the face of the video game industry forever. Like, the crafting survival genre exists so prominently on Steam because of Minecraft. All of those copycat games that have like blocks or whatever as everything, that's because of Minecraft. Battle Royale, like Fortnite and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, all of those games that people complain about that they're so popular. It all started with Minecraft, with a little something called Minecraft Hunger Games, which is like a little mini game that you would play on people's servers that was like one arena with a bunch of people, kill each other, last man standing wins. That's literally Fortnite. And Minecraft did that years ago, but it was just called the Hunger Games instead. And of course, very similar to what I was talking about with Skyrim, the modding community completely made this game explode. I mean, granted, this game gained a lot of traction and popularity because of Let's Players, YouTubers, people talking about it, news articles of people being like, oh, I made like a Star Trek ship in Minecraft. I made a piano in Minecraft, people just making things and letting their creativity run wild. Whether it's a small child, a young adult, an even bigger adult, an old man, anybody can get into this game because it's so simple. You build blocks, you destroy blocks, you mine and you craft. And from there, you can just expand to whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. People have made like little short films and stories in Minecraft. People have made working calculators, working computers in Minecraft. That's how big it is. That's how the possibilities are practically endless, and they are endless because people are still making stuff in Minecraft. Not only that, but Minecraft also went through that Undertale phase, if you know what I'm talking about, where like so many people like it that people just hate it, There's the diehard group, and then there's like the little kids that make the game super uncool to play, and so that creates, the group of people that just say, oh, Minecraft was never good, it's so overrated, right? But, people are kind of coming around again. 2018, 2019, especially now in 2019, Minecraft came back in like a massive way. It is like one of the most popular games to play now, again, for like the third time. And of course, that's because of live streamers, Let's Players, PewDiePie started playing Minecraft again, so it got really popular again. The modding community, texture packs, skins, giving yourself a sense of individuality with your own skin and your own texture pack and customizing the game to literally whatever you want. And then it expanded even more from PC, Microsoft bought Minecraft from Notch, and so obviously, you gotta put that game on Xbox, put that game on PlayStation, put it on Switch, put it on phones, put it on like your microwave, put it on the Wii U. It's everywhere. Minecraft is literally everywhere. We have like Minecraft EDU, like a special educational version of Minecraft. The possibilities, as I said, are endless, and they're still expanding with this one game. A lot of the customs, a lot of the things that happens in the game industry right now, the fact that there's a lot of games that come out in early access, they come out in alpha, they come out in beta, that's because Minecraft made that popular. Minecraft blew up while it was in beta and alpha, and so other companies were like, oh yeah, me too, I will also have my game in alpha and beta and put it out available, That's because of Minecraft. The whole idea of like developers being more, transparent and personality based or whatever is because of Mojang and how, silly and quirky they were. Of course, just like Undertale and like a lot of these other games, inspiring independent developers to kind of do their own thing, which gave us stuff like Terraria, which is also a really good game. Starbound is also a really good game, right? The competition that kind of breeds innovation. Until this day, it has been almost 10 years since Minecraft has come out, and there's still updates. There's still like actual official updates to the regular game that adds, you know, more enemies, more dungeons, more stuff to do, more crafting recipes. So much so that I've forgotten, you know, I can't keep up. Literally, I can't keep up. I'm like trying to like relearn all of them. I used to know all of the recipes by heart, but you know, after a while, you know, there's so many, you're just a little overwhelmed. But of course, they added like the book that gives you all of the recipes, and you just click on it and you have it. You know, all of these minor improvements have made the game just live far, far longer than anybody expected. Even after it fell off a little bit, it went back up, you know? And so, this game, especially now, is getting like not just a second wind, like a third wind of popularity. And I don't think that's gonna go away anytime soon, because there's too many people modding. There's too many people with a career, you know, just playing Minecraft. There's too many ideas for like updates and whatnot. And the impact that it had on the industry, regardless of your opinions on this game, is 110% undeniable. Even if you think that the game sucks, I mean, like, even if the game is bad, you know, even if somebody comes in and says, I am the official ruler of all video games and I declare this game as officially bad, as objectively bad, it doesn't matter. Because the video game world was one way back in 2019. Was totally, in 2009. Yeah, 2009, sorry. The video game world was one way before Minecraft. And after Minecraft, it totally changed to something, nothing was ever the same. Nothing was ever the same because of Minecraft. Oh, and if you want to talk about like the actual game itself, I just think it's a very therapeutic experience for me. I like legitimately, even when it was cool to hate Minecraft, I still loved Minecraft, you know? There's nothing more relaxing than like just going into a world and building stuff alone. I've always loved playing Minecraft alone. I think it's really annoying following the rules of other servers and other people, and you know, vanilla Minecraft has always been perfect for me, plus mods, of course. So, yeah, game of the decade, man. Officially released in 2011. Minecraft. It changed everything. All right, I have been talking for almost 90 minutes, so I think I'm just gonna stop here. Those were my top 10 games of the decade from 2010 all the way to 2019. So just as a recap, we have number 10, Res Infinite. Number 9, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Number 8, Shin Megami Tensei 4 and 4 Final, or Apocalypse. They're the same game, so just shove it into one. The next one is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Number 6 is Yz8 Lacrimosa of Donna. Number 5, The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky 1 on PSP. Number 4 is Undertale. Number 8, Persona 5, even though I was very much debating Persona 4 Golden or Persona 5. You know, you can just add those two in there if you want. Number 2, Nier Automata. And number 1, Minecraft, with the runner-up, like a little honorable mention there, to Super Mario Galaxy 2. And that's my list. That's 10 years of my life right there. Playing video games and like really getting to know all of these, either recently or for a long time now. All of these games have like their own history, and it's incredible how far we've come, you know? Every single year, there's always something interesting, there's always something new, something that comes out of nowhere to absolutely surprise the heck out of us. And so, that's why I love video games so much, and that's why, you know, my career is based around video games, because there's never a boring day. There's never a boring day, and, you know, and if in my 25 years of life, I've been playing video games for like 20 of those. So, games have been a thing for all of my existence, essentially. And so I look forward to another 10 years of seeing how games advance, how much more, you know, creative ideas we get from like the indie crowd mostly. The AAA crowd is good for like graphical advancements, but not really for actual ideas, you know, just implementing stuff that we already know and just make it better. But yeah, if you guys agree or disagree with my list, feel free to let me know. Of course, I want to know what you guys think, because it's been 10 motherfucking years, okay? There are so many games that people can go for as like their own personal games of the decade. I was actually thinking of having something like Street Fighter 4 as like a game of the decade, because you know, having games be like in 3D, that totally changed everything for all other fighting games where they all want to be 3D now. Well, actually, no, Street Fighter 4 came out in 2008, so replace what I said with like Guilty Gear Xrd or something like that. But anyway, as I said, 10 years worth of games, so I'm sure all of you have your own personal tastes and your own personal preferences in games. So I want to know what you guys think. You can list out your list of 10, or, you know, it could be 5 or just 1. I mean, I'm not expecting you to, you know, give me a whole list of 10, but, you know, I'd be interested in seeing what you guys, think, your reasoning for why it's game of, like, the whole decade. I mean, for me, Minecraft was because of, not only it's a great game, but, like, the impact that it had on the whole industry. It totally changed everything. So, you know, I'm appreciating it on those grounds, but other people might have a totally different game just because they personally like it a lot, you know, and that's good enough. So, if you guys enjoyed this video, this very, very long video, be sure to give me a like, and of course you can subscribe, hit the bell icon, and, you know, follow for any other updates. I have a bunch of stuff down in the description, and, yeah, maybe pretty soon I'll have a video up about my New Year's resolutions. Maybe after in 2020, I'll have my resolutions video up where I can essentially update you guys on, you know, where my life is at right now, and what my goals are, and, you know, how I want to organize myself to do all of the things that I want to do, which is a lot. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully you're all having a happy holidays. You're all doing very well. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, happy everything. Just be happy and spend time with your families. All right, this has been me, THP, signing off. And, gosh, after looking at this list, I might actually go and maybe, you know, play a couple of these games. I have Persona Q2 right now that I'm kind of binging on right now, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and just play a little bit of that, all right? Okay, see you next time. Bye.